We are starting today with a big new survey from Loose Women and This Morning ahead of International Women's Day, looking at everything from family life to personal safety. And we're finding out what it really means to be a woman in 2026. Now, the survey revealed some eye-opening things, including almost a quarter of women in their 30s and 40s have turned down a promotion or a new job because they just couldn't juggle it with family life. And 1 in 5 said they'd had to say no to a promotion because their work wasn't flexible enough. So do you think women were sold a lie when we were told, Gloria, we can have it all?
Well, you know
Does
something?
it exist?
I think we're all still having it all, no matter what age we are. But you have to go back to my era, because at the beginning of the 60s, I mean, in 1962, I had Karen, who obviously was my first baby. And at that stage, I mean, my mum, we had no spare money in our household when we were growing up. But my mum wasn't allowed to work because no wife of mine's going to work. My dad said, I will provide for the family. But at the beginning of the 60s, women were beginning to want to have a career. And unless you had enough money in your family to go to university in those days, which we didn't, I wanted a career. And like Colleen, I was singing, virtually coming out of the womb. I came out singing, "Powder your face with sunshine." And anyway, so went on singing. So when I was first married...
Your mum wanted to work?
What's that?
Did you think your mum might have wanted...
She did want to work.
Did she?
But she did what her husband said, you see, in those days.
Yeah.
So you have to look at the era. But like Colleen, I was singing from a very early age. So when I first got married and had Karen, in fact, when I was first offered the job of broadcasting, my husband had been looking after the children at night time, because I was obviously out singing at night in cabaret and things like that. So that worked. But then I was lucky enough to be offered a job broadcasting. So just given the job. And this was in the times of bombs, bullets and barricades, which you would remember, which was a tough job then. There were no women in television, really. No women really behind the scenes either. So I liked the challenge of all of that, because my boss said, my boss-to-be said, you'll be out in the streets of Northern Ireland covering bombs, bullets and barricades. And that seemed like a real career and a real job. But then at that stage, I had 2 children and one on the third on the way. And then I realised that you could not work unless you had a really strong, trustworthy backup. And so I didn't have young students of 19 or 20. I had much older women who were trustworthy and I could really depend on them. And actually, my children really grew to love them like family. And so when they're sick, nothing takes over that guilt, no matter who you have looking after your children. But give or take, I knew that they were well looked after. And somehow or other at the beginning, because I started in radio, I could sort of fit it all in with a school run, drop them off in the morning, pick them up in the afternoon. Then when it got a wider career, then they were much older. And Karen, who was 8 years older than the youngest one, she was sort of like a second mother almost. And the trustworthy lady was always at the house to look after them and cook for them.
So it sounds like you did have it all.
Well, I did at that point, and I feel as if, you see, I've always had a theory as well. I think you can make it work if you really want it and if you want to do it. But what I like about the way women's lib as such has evolved, you can have whatever you want these days. You can have a career if you want it, or if you want to be at home with your children, you can do that without anybody judging either the fact that you're working.
Either way, but I think it's difficult because I worked all my life, like you said, with all my family, my mum, dad, my sisters, all of that. So I didn't really know a different life. But I did remember thinking once I had my kids, I wanted them to have as much a normal life as possible. So therefore I did turn down jobs to stay at home with the kids because I didn't want to uproot them just because it suited me.
Jobs like what?
Well, I was offered a West End show, being part of an original cast of the West End show. It was Legally Blonde, actually, when it first came over years ago. It was after I was halfway through Dancing on Ice, I think. And I got sent all these, and of course everyone's like, you've got to do it, you've got to do it. But it was a year's contract. And then people were saying things like, we can go home at the weekend. You get Sunday off. You know, Kira was like 7 or 8. And I just thought, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not uprooting her. She had all her school friends, you know, the boys had their friend. I thought, but I think that stems back to me feeling that I'd missed out a lot in my own young life of having, I used to always have to leave my friends, and there was things I couldn't join, because we were working. So I had this real thing. But I've never regretted it, ever. And my only thing is, yes, nowadays women, and they have fought for that right to have it all, but I think inside we can never have it all. because whatever we do, we have this inherent, well, I do, have this inherent guilt that I'm not giving either 100%. I'm not giving my kids...
exhausting.
Well, the thing is, for me, that I just think I'm not giving my kids 100% and I'm not giving my work 100% because when I'm doing the work, I'm worried about the kids. And it's like, you kind of want to have it all, but I kind of sometimes think as well, we've almost made a rod for our own backs by trying to have it all.
I think... Sorry, I was just going to say about Shirley Conran back in the 60s. She wrote that book, Superwoman. And then many, many decades later, she decided you couldn't have it all.
Yeah. Well, I think it just depends what you think of, what your definition is of having it all. First of all, I think childcare is everything. And I think we are still woeful in this country with our childcare. It's so expensive. So if you're lucky enough to find somebody like I did, our Pat, who we recently lost, who was just the most amazing. She was in her 60s. That'd be my advice to new mums, new parents. Look for an older person that can sit for hours with the ducks and do it. And we just lost her a few weeks ago now. My kids are as devastated as they would have been if it was their nan, because she was a constant, kind, patient person for them. I adored her as well. And so, and she was there for all those early times when, you need real patience, because me to sit for the ducks for hours, I just can't do it. I'm just like this ADHD maniac. And I would say, for me, it's more the teen-ternity, like in the teenage years,
that's when
the girls have needed me so much more, and all those conversations that they might be having with somebody else that you wouldn't really want them to have, they're having with me. And I think I agree with you about you can always feel like you're not doing your best in either. But in a way, I have got total acceptance with that. I'm not a perfect mum, I'm not a perfect TV presenter, I'm not perfect. But in a way, I have it all because I have that acceptance that I've got all these things. And jobs that I've turned down, I got offered Benidorm, I turned that down. I got offered a big show in America when I was first pregnant, turned that down. I have never thought, oh, God, I wish I'd done that.
No,
so it might look on paper, oh, you didn't have it all, but I did because I kept making the choices
and you do your
that I
best
wanted.
with everything, of course. But you talk about Pat, and unfortunately not everyone can have a wonderful Pat, someone that you trust at home. And the cost of nurseries it's like, I think it's the biggest in Europe here in the UK, which is the highest price. It's extortionate amount of money for people to try to, OK, I do want to go back to work, but
that's the biggest
I'm working to pay the nursery. So it's very, very tough for people.